Burns Gambo show on this Friday ahead of the Cards-Bills game. Joining us right now on the Arizona Sports Line. We knew her for many years when she was with the Arizona Republican AZ Central. She is now the Bills beat writer for the Buffalo News. She's been that for a few years now. We welcome back to the show. I think we've had her on in the past. I hope we have anyway.
I believe we have.
Katherine Fitzgerald joining us here on Burns Gambo. Katherine, how are you? We haven't heard from you in a while. How have you been?
Hey, I'm good. Thank you guys so much for having me on. It's good to catch up.
All right, the most important question we're going to ask you. Buffalo winters or Arizona summers?
Oh, gosh, that's a great question.
Of course.
I think I'll still go Arizona summers just because they're a little more predictable, whereas the Buffalo winters, you don't know when it's going to hit you necessarily. You know it's coming, but you don't know what day.
Okay.
So I think that's a slight difference to me of the predictability.
Are you an Arizona girl? Were you born and raised here in Arizona, or did you hail from somewhere? I'm just curious if that was like a total shock to your system living in Arizona your whole life and going to Buffalo.
Yeah, I'm from Baltimore originally. So came out to ASU for grad school at Cronkite.
Okay.
So it was a bit of a shock to the system. I moved out in August to start school, and I'm very pale, so I spent a lot of money on sunscreen, bought a lot of baseball hats, but, got used to it for sure. So it was then different to move back to the East Coast into a colder winter than I was used to.
Much colder. Those winters in Buffalo could be brutal. All right, let's talk about this matchup. I'm a big addition by subtraction guy, and your opinion is moving on from Stephon Diggs. Is that addition by subtraction for the Bills?
That's what they're hoping for sure. They've really revamped that wide receiver room. I'm really interested to see how Keon Coleman pans out. I think just seeing the chemistry he's built with Josh Allen has been really fun to watch over the summer. But this group is so new. Only Khalil Shakir is a guy on the roster from the wide receiver group who has caught a pass from Josh Allen in a game. They're so different, but I think the team is hoping just to spread the ball around a little more. That was always their goal last year, but it didn't totally pan out. So they're hoping it is addition by subtraction, but I think it'll take a while to figure out exactly what replacing Stephon Diggs looks like, even if it is going to ultimately work.
Yeah, and not to necessarily put you on the spot here, but it does feel like if there was a time to play Buffalo, would you agree that the time would be now while maybe they still are figuring things out a little bit, both on the offensive side and the defensive side?
I think so. I mean, I think the offense is going to take a little bit just to get its feet under itself. Joe Brady had a full offseason as offensive coordinator to kind of craft what he wants this team to look like, but now they have to see if it actually works. However, I think there's more question marks on the defense. They've moved on from a lot of long-standing guys back there in the secondary. They lost Jordan Poyer, Micah Hyde, Tre'Davious White. And so there's guys there that, just haven't had the time on task together. And that's, I think, so critical on the defense from a communication standpoint to build that trust. And even, the turnover itself is a factor, but then they had injuries throughout the summer at safety in particular. So guys just didn't get as many reps together. And I think that might show a little bit early.
One of the things we noticed when they moved on, they fired Dorsey and they put Brady in charge, is that they went 6-1 down the stretch and they committed to running the football at a much higher pace. What are some of the differences between Dorsey and Brady?
Yeah, the running game especially, I think, stands out. Josh Allen ran it more coming down the stretch, and I think that has been a really fine balance for the Bills of figuring out how do we use Josh Allen to the best of his abilities while also protecting him. I know that's not an unfamiliar storyline in Arizona, but I think with Allen just letting him run a little more down the stretch, that's what stood out to me some, where I think Ken Dorsey was a little more hesitant with Josh. They also were in a must-win now mode, and I think that's when they really let Allen take over his game. But I think going into this year, you're going to see Allen continue his run game. It's so critical to the kind of player he is. And I think Joe Brady really embraces that.
There are Katherine Fitzgerald, by the way, joining us from the Buffalo News here on the Burns and Gambo shows. We're previewing the Bills game with her. There are so few flaws in Josh Allen's game that you almost feel kind of nitpicky to talk about. But the one that everybody goes to is the turnovers. Has that just become accepted collateral damage when Josh Allen is your quarterback, or has there been any real progress into trying to fix that part of his game?
One thing that's interesting is he did mention this summer changing some of his throwing technique a little bit.
Okay.
I don't know if that was fully prompted by the turnovers specifically or more just kind of he went through some injuries the last couple of years, and I think it was a little more body maintenance. But he's definitely always trying to find any edge he can to make his game just a little better. The turnovers have been a problem. But I think the flip side of that is if you reel in some of those wild throws, then you don't get the huge plays that win games as well. So I think the Bills have accepted is maybe a strong word, but they've kind of understood that it's going to happen. So how do we just mitigate the damage?
I'm wondering, too, about, from your perspective and maybe the perspective of the fan base in the market, how much, I don't know if pressure is the right word that Josh Allen's under, because any quarterback who's that elite is going to have pressure on them every year to perform. But given the losses that they've had, most of the previews that I've read about the Bills have kind of come from the mindset of, hey, it's Josh Allen. They'll be fine. Hey, it's Josh Allen. They're going to win a bunch of games anyway. Is there pressure on Josh Allen to be an MVP-like guy, given everybody that they have lost and how they've kind of revamped that offense a little bit?
I think there is pressure. A lot of it is internal from Allen. You know, he wants to get this city back to the Super Bowl to win it all. I think he understands that even if you make those big plays, if you're leaving the end of the season without your ultimate goal, it doesn't totally matter. So I think he's putting a lot of pressure on himself. Just in a holding himself to the highest standard kind of situation. I think there's a lot of pressure on this defense, though, too. That's where it kind of stands out to me of, in my mind, the playoff losses have been more on them. So I think, you know, if they're going to keep going in the playoffs, that's where I see a bit more pressure.
Baltimore, Arizona, Buffalo, Bills Mafia, that fan base, unlike anything you've ever seen?
It is unreal. You know, I think seeing how it shows up in every facet of life here. My landlord always texts me, "Go Bills," things like that. I know I've repeated myself on a couple of shows here, but just seeing the way that no matter what people are doing, you know, there's so many foods named after the players here. You go into the grocery store and there's deals for the Bills, stuff like that. You can't avoid it, I guess is what I'm saying. And it's very cool, though, to see that passion. I think it seeps into everything. License plates all the time have different variations of the spelling Mafia on them. So it's all around. But I think it's cool to see a city rally around a team that way.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. Katherine, we do appreciate the time, especially so close to the weekend. Thanks for coming on for a few. Stay well, and hopefully we'll get to talk soon.
Of course. Yes. Thank you guys for having me, and y'all stay well, too.
Absolutely.
All right, Katherine. Thank you.
Katherine Fitzgerald joining us from the Buffalo News, the Bills beat writer here on the Burns and Gambo Show.
Thanks for watching Burns and Gambo. Click to see more from the guys and hit the button in the middle to subscribe so you never miss a video from Arizona sports.